Hail. My name is Gonti Villabasker. I come out of the Grim Garrison Park, and today I wanted to talk about the Assassin class, but more specifically, like how to play Assassin. And this video is kind of on a whim because I have seen that there's actually a decent amount of content that exists for the rules of play for the Assassin class, like how the abilities work, what equipment you get. So that's not really what I want to talk about uh, because I've noticed that there is something of a hole in the tactics side of things. So, and that's what I think is the more interesting topic. So that's what I'm going to talk about is how to use the abilities that the assassin gets, and the in some cases the equipment, one specific piece of equipment, the equipment that assassins get in kind of new ways, and to shake things up a bit and make the most out of what you get with the class. So I want to go ahead and say first that this is not intended to tell you how you ought to play Assassin. That's not the point. Rather, just to add some tactics that you might enjoy, you might think are fun to your playbook when you're playing Assassin, or maybe even just to get your creative juices flowing next time you play the class. But no matter how you play, you just want to remember to have fun. Also, I'm going to add that this is my personal playbook. I don't play bow assassin. Some of what I'll talk about will easily apply if you're using bow, but just keep that in mind that this is going to be kind of skewed toward my play style. So I tend to use short swords, Florentine, and light throwing weapons. So that's a lot of what I'm going to be talking about here. So first thing is the assassin. There's like perceptions of the assassin class that I want to just go ahead and address. A lot of people that I've met that play assassin believe that the assassin is this light on your feet, cardio heavy. You're the person who's running the objective, and I don't necessarily think that's true. You can definitely play assassin that way, but if it's going to keep you from playing the class, the cardio requirement, then I think it's important to point out that you don't have to play that way. Sometimes I do. So, like, I am not exactly fit, but, I like to do a lot of running up and down the field. But then also, I will not play like that. And it's just as effective. So, I'm primarily going to talk about how to use the abilities. And a lot of these tactics don't require you to run so much as just move with purpose, maybe like a fast walk. Just tactical movement is what I like to think about it as. But don't think that you have to be a sprinter to do any of what I'm going to talk about here. So yeah, just keep that in mind. So you don't have to be that person. First things first. Also, this is the third first. It's going to be a lot of firsts. Is armor, right? With the thought in mind that you do not have to be a sprinter. It is so game changing to have armor. Assassin can wear up to 2 points, and if you don't have access to armor, don't worry about it. It's fine. A lot of people don't wear armor, but if you can wear armor, then you should. It just changes a lot. So, and it feels very different. And it kind of helps with not having to be quite as quick on your feet, I guess, if you've got that little bit of extra protection, because you don't get a shield. So if you can wear armor, then I suggest trying it out at least, and just see how it makes you feel, and changes your survivability quite a bit on the field. It opens up plays that you wouldn't usually have access to as well. But that's an aside. All right. So level 1, you get your Shadow Step, Assassinate Unlimited. A Shadow Step is twice per life, I should say. It's also ambulant and extraordinary, so you can move your feet while you say the incantation for it, and you do not have to have a free hand. You can have, like I said, I fight Florentine with short swords, so you can have both those swords in your hand and still use your ability. You could do it on the run as well, so you do not have to stop. That's not the same for everybody that gets Shadow Step, but for assassins specifically, it does work that way. So you do not have to stop to use Shadow Step if you're playing assassin. It's really nice, and it can really help you as well to kind of bait out the spell balls or arrows, that sort of thing that is really tricky, or even verbal casters. You can really bait them into kind of wasting their abilities on you because you're moving. Maybe you're running towards them, posing a threat. Uh, you just you got your swords forward, moving aggressively toward them. They're going to want to get you to stop doing that if they're a caster, especially. And you can shadow step. I step into the shadows. I step into the shadows. You can play with the cadence of it to kind of adjust when the ability actually goes active. And you could totally swing your swords while you're doing this as well. So you can lay on the heat and then shadow step while you're in the midst of doing this. And then, of course, once you're in substantial, you can't continue to attack. And with shadow step, you also can't continue to move your location. So you're not stopped. You can turn, right? Which is really important for the people who are going to come up on you and maybe try to track you out or release you from your insubstantial state. You're not stopped. You're not frozen. So you can turn and face these people and put your swords up in the way. Like you don't have to let people walk up and like hold their weapon next to your back or anything like that. And with shadow step, you can end the insubstantial condition whenever you want, right? When we talk about blink, that's not going to always be the case, but with shadow step you can. So you can rotate whatever as long as you're not changing your physical location. And you can end whenever you want. So there's absolutely no reason to let people kind of gather up on you and surround you. And with that in mind, I want to talk about the next kind of piece of tactic, other than like the moving, and that is with Shadow Step. You want to use it to kind of sidestep, I'll call it that, or dodge like a troublesome spell or ability, and then end the condition pretty quickly. You, in my opinion, you don't want to stay in insubstantial with Shadow Step because you can't move. If for whatever reason you find that you are gaining some tactical advantage out of staying insubstantial, then you should be doing the recharge incantation for your poison weapon, right? So you can recharge while you're insubstantial. You can't reapply the poison enchantment, but you can do the recharge incantation, which does require a free hand for assassin while you're insubstantial. So that's a great way to make the use of that time if you are stuck in the insubstantial state. But with Shadow Step, ideally, you don't really want to stay there. You quickly use it to kind of dodge an ability or a spell or an arrow if you catch it in time. I Step into the Shadows is very quick to get off. It's very easy. You take the hit or the ability or whatever. You're insubstantial. You declare insubstantial, so that way they know that you're not taking damage or whatever it is that they tried to get you with, and then you quickly end that state, and you need to be on the move now. That tactical movement to target whoever it is that you're aggressing or someone else. But you don't want to stay in Shadow Step insubstantial for very long. It just, in my experience, has not been super beneficial. And on the contrary, a lot of people will not expect you to end the state that quickly. And this is awesome because you can catch a lot of people like really off guard by shadow stepping, taking the hit, they're still in, shock of like, oh man, this person just, dodged my spell or spell ball or arrow or whatever. Uh, if you want, you can quickly like reach in your bag for a throwing weapon while you're saying, I return to the physical world, I return to the physical world. And as soon as you're out, if they've got range on you, you need to, aggress on them. Throw, whether that's throwing a thrown weapon and then, you know, power walking their way, little light jog or, whatever your level of movement is comfortable with. Maybe you're a bow assassin. You take the blow while you're insubstantial, don't count it. You know, you could be readying your shot, pointing the bow, as long as you're very clear that you're in the insubstantial state. There's nothing illegal about that. And then you quickly be getting out of that state and launching your counter offensive. So in and out very quickly. Be ready to aggress. Feel free to rotate. You can do that. You're not frozen. Your feet aren't stuck to the ground. You just can't move your location. And the last thing, and this will come in more with blink, but while you're insubstantial, you can see and hear, and you can be seen and be heard. So there's no stealth mechanic in version 8 Amtgard. Okay. So what this means is that you can go insubstantial and then continue to communicate with your team. Right? That is super important. You can go insubstantial and continue to communicate with the opponents. Right? So there's some, crafty things that you can do with that that we'll get into more with Blink. I think it applies a little bit more to Blink because with Shadow Step, like I said, you don't really want to be staying in Shadow Step. You just are giving up a lot by not being able to move around. That is really remedied by the mobility of Blink. So that's Shadow Step. I know there's a lot, but trust me, it's good stuff. The next thing is Assassinate. It's really not a lot to say about Assassinate. Just one important thing. It's unlimited, so use it every time. Tactics, I like to think, are reserved for when you have like a resource or a decision to make. Assassinate, because it's unlimited, it's very easy to use. You just say assassinate upon killing someone within 20 feet. And that's it. There's no reason to not use it. So you should use it every time, right? And maybe the biggest thing about assassinate is, especially if you're playing against somebody maybe that's newer or on a more medium-sized battlefield with a lot going on, is if you've assassinated someone and someone starts to try to like resurrect them, maybe just be prepared to remind them that they're cursed. So that's probably the biggest weakness of the assassinate ability is if you're not forgetting to do it, a lot of people are forgetting what it even does, or that they are under an effect because they're dead, and you're not often under an effect while you're dead, right? So usually dead is the end until you respawn or are resurrected. But assassinate is this weird place where it implies, applies a condition in death. So it's just very strange. A lot of people will maybe not even intentionally, but they'll, kind of ignore the curse condition. And so if you can, remind people that they're cursed if you see it. But other than that, just make sure you use an assassinate every single time. It's extraordinary. It's ambulant. It's unlimited. You should be using it every single time. There's really no choices to be made here. So we're going to move on from that. All right. The last thing with level 1 is the piece of equipment that I want to talk about, and that is the light throwing weapon. So as an assassin, you can use light throwies and heavy throwies. But as an assassin, you are the only class that gets access to light throwies. So if you're doing like shared ammunition on the field, then If you use exclusively light throwies, then you don't have to worry about anybody other than other assassins throwing those back at you. So that's number one. However, you can use medium throwies. So your monks and your scouts, who also have throwing weapons, you could throw those back at them if you're sharing projectiles on the field. So, but for you as the assassin, there's no reason for you to bring anything that isn't a light throwy. It's just tactically better. The other thing is that, and this is something I've started playing with recently, actually, I found a lot of joy in this, is the shapes of your throwies. So I keep about 5 throwies on me, a little satchel with 5 throwies, and there's 2 shapes that I play with. The first is probably a little more typical, so camera's fogged out a little bit. Right, you've got this more spherical thing. So the pink here is to help indicate that this is not a spell ball. Of course, there's no tassels, there's no tail or anything. And this is all cloth on the inside, cloth tape on the outside. Little indicator. That's my G there. Fishhook G for Gonti. And then, right, so the pink to help indicate this is not a spell ball, this is a throw. So, and this is just, my hand. I don't have super huge hands, but, pretty small, right? So these round ones, which I think are, more typical for throwies, they fly a lot farther and a lot straighter than the next ones I'm going to show you. These are great for sniping. Okay. So, kind of going, tossing like a further distance. Something that's really great is, in objective games, I've done this millions of times, but you're chasing somebody down. They're on their way to ring a bell. You can toss it. It's being carried by the, forward momentum of you moving. And, if there's a crowd, then after you toss it, you kind of slide to the left, slide to the right, right? You break off center. So now your attack is in play. You're moving, breaking line of sight. They get hit, hopefully, right? And you're already engaging someone else. So you can kind of multitask in that way. So having like a lobber is really good for those kinds of plays. It's also like for bridge battles if there's multiple bridges, or different areas of combat. These are great for crossfire. So you've got 2 battles going on. You're in the squad, skirmishing off to the right, and then there's another squad skirmishing off to the left. You take a step back for a moment and peer over, just lob it, right? It's not always about the person right in front of you. My opinion is that the assassin class, and I'll talk more about this later, is specialized in like a numbers advantage, right? So it's a numbers game. Sometimes a quality game, but we'll talk about that here in a second. But so it's not always about killing the person right in front of you. If you can take out a person or wound a person in the other skirmish, and then tactically move around or whatever, then you're generating advantage still for the other team, right? For your other squad of people on your team. So lobbers, great. These things are amazing. They don't bounce super well, I should mention. So, and that'll take me into the other throwy. Let's see if we can get this camera to focus. There we go. Sweet. All right. So the other shape is this like more rectangular type thing, right? So this is actually the construction of this super simple. So whereas this like lobber it's all just cloth, like cloth squares cut up, and then another piece of cloth around that, and then cloth tape. This is old toilet paper cone, like the cardboard here, right? 2 of them side by side, a little trimmed off the top to make it a little shorter. And then it is also stuffed with cloth, right? You can use old socks. If you've got old clothes with holes in it, stuff like that, you cut those up into little triangles, little squares or whatever, and fill this and then it's wrapped in cloth tape. So pink again to help indicate that this is not like a spell ball. It's not really shaped like a spell ball, but the additional color is always helpful with throwies, so you're not confusing people, right? Cool. All right. Now, this shape is awesome. It does not fly very far. If you throw the throwy, you might be inclined to try to like shuriken throw it or something like that, right? It's not going to fly super far. However, what it does do, if you throw it long ways here, because of the shape, it's going to hit the ground, like, right? It's got that kind of thing going on there, and it actually pops off the ground. Okay, it's like a foot and a half consistently. It'll pop off the ground. This is great for getting underneath guards or shields and getting that leg or upper thigh, that kind of thing. You won't often get torso. It's not going to be quite that extreme, but you can pretty consistently get it to bounce off the ground and tag a shin or a knee or a thigh, something like that. And that is so good for those pesky monks with their pole arms. You throw it at the ground, they're like, okay, and when it pops up, they're like, oh, that's not okay. Or shields, or other Florentiners, they're usually pretty decent at stopping a light throwy. But yeah, so this is relatively close range though. So you just pop that on the ground, throw it kind of close to their feet, and the shape helps it to boop, pop off the ground and grab that leg. And then you can do whatever you want, right? You can coup de grace them, leave them, depending if it's an objective game, you just leg them and run off, that sort of thing. If it's more beneficial to let them be wounded and run away. But yeah, so that's a really cool way to use this kind of throwy. And if you've got your little satchel, if you're like me or a number of other assassin players that are out there, you've got like a little bag with your throwies. So you almost have a utility belt, right? So you've got your lobber for long distance, more straight throwing over a distance type thing. And then you've got like your funky shaped guy that's going to bounce off the ground really well to help get around people who are closer, maybe have their guard up a little bit more. So that's a really nice way to use that because bounces count, right? I should have mentioned that first. Bounces count in Amtgard. So yeah, so that's a really nice way to use that. Now, the last thing with the throwies tactics thing is also if you're fighting someone like face to face and maybe all you have left is lobbers, or if you just don't want to try to bounce it off the ground, when you're just out of range with the sword, something that I found works actually relatively well is instead of trying to, just kind of drill them with this throwy, you're trying to throw it really fast or really hard or something, get it past their block. You don't have to do that. In fact, it's preferable that you don't try to drill somebody with one of these throwies from super close. But to get around their block, you probably have a melee weapon. In fact, if you don't, then you probably should. But typically, I'll have my offhand short sword, right? This hand, my throne, and you've got it up like this. A lot of people are gonna like keep their distance, or they'll stay just close enough because they want to pounce on you, right? But they don't want to get got by your thing. You just a nice little underhanded toss to about chest level, as though you're trying to throwing something to someone for them to catch it. So very quite gentle, right? And you do this from just out of sword range, really. Like you shouldn't be able to hit them with your sword. They shouldn't be able to hit you with their sword. You toss it, and then you follow behind it because uh, the best threat is a promise, right? If you throw your throwy super high, like, oh, haha, you're distracted, and I come in, odds are that they're not going to pay any attention to it at all because there's no threat of that throwy actually hitting them. But if you toss it in such a way that it actually could hit them, and it's moving quite slow, that's really the trick to this is that you don't want to give them the opportunity where they can just swat it and they have time still to deal with you, right? You toss it quite slow, and as it's traveling, and it will, you're about chest level, right? So it should be able to hit them. The best threat is a promise. right? So it should be able to actually hit them. And then you come in behind it. Now they are either, moving their weapons to try to deal with you. Uh, Maybe they're trying to do both, right? But that's not going to be very good at blocking either. Uh, their feet are probably planted to the ground. A lot of people freeze in this situation, which is really great for the slow moving, throwy. Um, or, they block the throwy and you hit them. Or they try to block you and the throwy hits them. So, and you don't have to, you don't have to like fastball it or anything like that. And this is also going to play into our blink strategy later, because the cool thing about blink is that you can move and you can pick up equipment while you're insubstantial. So, but you're limited to within 50 feet of where you started your insubstantial state, right? So if you're like fastballing these throwies and maybe it hits them, maybe it doesn't. But either way, it either deflects off super far or you just completely miss and it's just flying super far. You're probably not getting that back while blinked, right? So, because you're going to travel quite far to get that, especially with these lobbers that are round, they're going to roll, right? So, um, this helps to keep things relatively close to you, which is also really great for if you're going to try to engage another group right after you're done dealing with this person. Then your throw right there. You pick it up really quick. Sometimes that's faster than getting it out of the bag, grabbing it off the ground, and you're ready again. Or if you are blinked, then all your stuff is relatively close, so you're reloading. You're doing like the archer reload, but insubstantial. So that's the throwy, the light throwy. Love those little things. I've come to really like the different shapes, and you should experiment with maybe seeing how to get the little throwy to bounce even better. I think that'd be really cool. I'd be interested in seeing more designs like that while keeping it relatively small and lightweight. All right. Now the next thing is poison weapon. So I didn't talk about poison weapon in level 1, uh, but I am going to talk about it now. The look the part poison weapon, because you get the actual poison weapon ability in level 2, or poison arrows. You get 2 poison arrows if you're playing the bow assassin and you want to pick the poison arrows. But if you take the poison arrows, you don't get the poison weapon. Personally, my play style, I take the poison weapon because I don't use the bow. So, poison weapon is awesome. The first thing is that the enchantment, this confuses a lot of people. The enchantment goes on you, the person, and it affects your melee strikes that deal a wound, right? So the next wound you deal with a melee weapon is wound skill. It doesn't go on the weapon. So if your weapon gets heated or broken, um, the enchantment's on you. So the other weapon still will, deal the wounds kill. Or if maybe you've got a third sword back at base and both your weapons get destroyed, you pick up another weapon. The poison weapon applies to that as long as it's still active, right? So the enchantment is on you, not on your gear. That is confusing for some people, so figured I'd get that out of the way. It also only applies to the next wound you deal, so it doesn't pop on armor, and so only like a wound. So someone has lost their limb, or if you hit them in the chest and they die, then unfortunately it still expends the ability, right? So just keep that in mind. But also, if they are pro-death, protected from death, and you wound them, it still pops the poison. It's a mandatory application of the effect on the next wound. So, and they don't die. So that's the bad part, right? So pick your battles wisely with your poison weapon. But otherwise, the poison weapon, you want to have that active pretty much all the time. So with look the part, as long as you're in garb and you've got your sash, you'll have your look the part poison weapon. So from level 1, you could have your 2 shadow steps assassinate 2 points of armor, both short swords, and a poison weapon once per life, and that's quite a good loadout for a level 1 class. That's pretty nice. The level 2 poison weapon is substantively different. So because it has a charge times 3 on it. And the way that works is if you have no uses of poison weapon left, then you could say the recharge incantation 3 times. You do need an open hand. We mentioned that earlier. You cannot move your feet, or that interrupts the incantation. And once you've said it 3 times, you've recharged your poison weapon enchantment, and now you can reapply the poison weapon enchantment. I coat these weapons with a deadly poison. I coat these weapons with a deadly poison. Yeah, so there's that. The look the part poison weapon does not have recharge on it. So what this means is once you hit 2nd level and you get your once per life poison weapon charge times 3, you every life have 2 uses of poison weapon, and you have to use both of them before you can recharge it. So, or you have to apply both of them before you can recharge it. So you use the first poison weapon, you kill someone, wound skill. You use the second poison weapon, you're wearing the enchantment, you can now recharge your poison weapon, and you should. You should. So if you've got like the time, right, then you should. This is not super crazy important. If you shouldn't prioritize recharging poison weapon if the battlefield or the objective demands attention, because you have to stop and have a free hand to do that. And worst case scenario, right, with poison weapon, you get 2 of those per life without ever having to recharge it, as long as you're looking the part. So, that's a lot. So you could go in, die, worst case, and come back. You've got both back, right? So if it's a fast respawn count, then maybe don't worry about recharging it. But if you've got time, then recharge it. You want to try to have it active all the time, or at the very least, you should be, using both instances of your poison weapon every life, because it's a quick wounds kill. A lot of people don't wear armor, and if they're not going to wear armor, then poison weapon, right? It's easy to get that leg if you want, that arm, just 1 wound, and the fight is over. And that is the best thing for an assassin, right? So you want to end that fight. Now, pairing up with the poison weapon and the fact that you can do the recharging can't while you're insubstantial. I mentioned that earlier. But with armor is enemy armor is often the biggest enemy of the assassin, because it protects them from your throwies, it protects them from your wounds kill, right? And if they've got a ton of armor, like they're warriors with their 6 points or even 4 points of armor is a lot, then that's your biggest enemy, is because you just need to get that 1 wound in, and with your 2 points of armor, or often none, that's problematic. Even if you're a decently skilled fighter, that can be an issue if the other person is also just somewhat skilled. They just have to be willing to take a hit to their armor to deal a wound to you, and things can go downhill very quickly. So look for gaps. This is the tip, right? Look for gaps in the armor. Armor only protects what it actually covers. And if you strike a gap in the armor, maybe they on their arm, right, they've got some wrist deal going on, they've got some upper arm, and their shoulder is exposed, strike at the shoulder if you can get it. Legs. I am reluctant to say groin, but it's a legal shot. Okay, do what you got to do. But but look for the gaps in the armor and swing there. And that's often a really good way to get your poison weapon applied. So thighs, inner thighs, leg, hip, knee. A lot of people wear knee pads and not like knee armor, right? So knee pads aren't armor. So look for the gaps in the armor, swing at that. You can win some of these fights. Most of the time, you don't really want to be getting into fights with these people that have super heavy armor, You're just not typically going to win those fights unless they're already pretty heavily damaged, or um, maybe you're able to machine gun them with some throwies, but you're typically not going to win those fights. So if you can't find the gap in the armor and take advantage of that, or if their armor is not already significantly damaged, then that might be a choice moment to pick your fights and maybe tactically move your way away from that person. All right. But that's poison weapon, right? So that's your big killer for assassins is you want it active as often as you have it. You want it active. Familiarize yourself with the recharge incantation. Remember that you can use the recharge incantation while you are insubstantial, and just make use of it. Aim for the gaps in the armor if you've got to, and yeah. Um, Other than that, maybe your job is to go get the people who aren't wearing armor. There's no better way to say it. If you can hit one limb before they can hit you twice, then you win that fight. So, and once again, assassin is a numbers. It's all about numbers. So if you kill one person, then you turn around and you try to go tag team somebody else, and you play that to your team advantage. All right. So that's poison weapon at level 2. Now, level 3, you get blink 2 per life. Okay, so I brought up blink several times, and just like Shadow Step, it's an extraordinary ambulance ability, which means you do not have to have free hands. You can have weapons in both hands if you want to, and you can be moving your feet. You can be in a full dead-on sprint if you want to be while you're using this ability, even more so than Shadow Step, because with blink, once you say the incantation, I vanish from sight, you can still move. And that is like the biggest upside to that over Shadow Step is that you can still move, and you can move within 50 feet of your starting point. 50 feet is a big radius. So from, you activate at the center. So 50 foot forward, 50 foot backwards, everywhere. That's 100 feet, diameter that you get to play with. A lot of fields aren't that big. So if you're toward the center and you've got 50 feet to move in all directions, when you cast blink, you're set. You can do a whole lot of moving. The other thing is that unless the game designer says that terrain impedes insubstantial, then insubstantial state allows you to move through terrain, right? Now that could be hazardous if you've got a lot of scouts or people who will release you from your insubstantial state. You could very easily die, right? If you were maybe off the side of a bridge or something along those lines, right? So you gotta keep that in mind. But 100-foot diameter, ignore terrain. It gives you a whole lot of mobility as an assassin. You can do a lot with that. Now, a couple of things that I've already mentioned. With blink, probably the coolest thing you can do is, well, maybe not coolest, but go get your throwies, right? You can pick up your throwing weapons, or if you're the bow assassin, go get your arrows, right? Collect your stuff. You're basically using it as the archer reload, except you can end your insubstantial state and still be on the field and go get somebody. That's not something that the archer gets to do, right? So that's a tactical advantage to that. For the downside that some people can release you from your state. But you go get your throwies, right? While you're in this high mobility state. The other thing is, I'm going to bring this back up from the Shadow Step section, is that you can see and hear. You can be seen and be heard, right? There's no stealth mechanic in Amtgard, which means that while you're blinked and you're able to move through walls and through terrain and just run around, walls that might stop people from casting through them for other people, but you can move through those and use them for cover and such. Yes, so you can move and you can be kind of coaching the battlefield, right? So what I mean by that is you go into your blink. Maybe you start your blink in order to dodge a spell ball or an arrow, or a otherwise bad situation. Maybe you're getting ganged up on by like two or three people, and you just need to get out of that situation. Then you go into your blink. Well, now, provided there's not immediately someone there to release you, you can kind of turn your attention to the field at large, right? You're no longer in an immediate threat. So you have this advantage now of being somewhat, semi-safe, and you can lay your eyes on the rest of the field. And, maybe you see an archer lining a shot up on someone else, call them out, speak to your team. Maybe you notice that the objective is open, speak to your team. Maybe you do have like two or three guys on you, and they're like sticking around you, trying to bully you in your blink state. So you call them out. You got a healer over here, and you notice that your warrior's missing some armor. Healer, go mend. So communication, and don't take this as the way to like boss your teammates around. Yeah. So the communication is not about that, right? It is very much about using your temporary safe state to expand the field awareness of everybody else on the field. Ideally, your team, right? The enemies can hear you, so don't expect them to do nothing about what you're saying, but they can't get you while you're insubstantial. So use this as a moment to communicate with your team. Maybe run around. If there's a wall or something you're trying to get through, maybe go around through the wall, right? And you can see now what your teammates can't see. So share that information with them. That's a huge boon that you can do while blinked. All right. So look for opportunities to communicate with your team while blinked. It's just awesome. You'd be surprised. Now, that's not something you're going to be able to do all the time, because while you're blinked, remember I said assassin is this numbers game kind of class, you have taken yourself out of combat, which means you can't really go get other people while you're insubstantial. So your team is -1 as long as you are blinked. However, because the way blink works is that unlike shadow step, you can't exit the blink insubstantial state as long as there's an enemy within 10 feet of you. A lot of times, because other players know that, they will there will be a player that will come and they'll stick within 10 feet of you, basically, and keep you stuck in that state is what they think is going on. But in reality, uh, in a lot of cases, as I said earlier, you're probably not winning the fight against the like big 4 armor, 4 points of armor, or 6 points of armor person. If you can somehow convince that person to hang out near you, to stop the little piddly assassin from I don't know, running the objective or doing whatever they think you're going to do, then you've kind of taken them out of the game as well. If they're not a ranged fighter, you've kind of taken them out of the game, and uh, you can move, so you can probably kind of trail them off, right? Like lead them away. Now they might not be willing to follow you to the ends of the earth or anything like that, but they might, they might come far enough away from the actual field of like where the combat is happening to effectively be useless. And while they're doing that, you're picking up your throwies or communicating with your team, that sort of thing. Now, I will say that they might try to get you released from your state, right? So this is a good opportunity to remember what I told you before, that under no circumstances should you just hang out and let people surround you and wait for your state to get released just so you can get murdered, right? So what you want to do instead is kind of stay on the move, kind of lazily. You can drag them into like a dangerous location if they really want to like follow you into a group of like 2 or 3 of your buddies. Because as soon as you're 10 feet away, which is not that far, all things considered, you could end that state. And now they're outnumbered and they've got to deal with, maybe 2 or 3 people, and then you, right? So there's that. But don't let people surround. Don't sit and hang out and wait to be surrounded. And if you are starting to see that, maybe there's like two or three people like starting to like surround you, you can square up and just be ready for that to happen. But don't stop moving in the meantime, right? So don't let them do that to you, and keep communicating, because otherwise, if you still got a good portion of your team alive, uh, you know, playing the game, doing whatever they're doing, and you've got the big armor man hanging out with you, then you have effectively taken them out of the fight, right? And now it's a 1-for-1 trade here, but it's the big armor man who objectively should be running the objective or doing something more important in the combat than hanging out next to the assassin, um, for the assassin, right? So that's a good trade. That's a pretty good trade. And you've just taken them willingly out of the fight. Better yet, if you can get like two people to hang out with you, that's awesome, right? So keep that in mind. So communicate. Don't let yourself get surrounded. You've got a lot of space to move. Use that to pick up your throwies. Use that to recharge your poison weapon. And you can move through walls, right? So this is all awesome. Familiarize yourself with how far 10 feet is. It's really not that far. And the last thing here is that, because it might matter if you do get into some kind of like weird chase situation where someone's like really intent on keeping you insubstantial, and for whatever reason you're really intent on getting out of it, then you can do the return, like the end insubstantial incantation. I return to the physical world while you're moving. You can do that while moving. So, and as long as you are outside of 10 feet by the time you finish the incantation, then you've successfully escaped, right? So that's blink. Probably, and you get that twice per life. It's probably one of the stronger abilities, in my opinion. One of the more flexible, cool abilities that you get as an assassin. So there's lots of use for it. That's just really cool. And yeah, so make the most out of your blink. All right. What's next? Hold person. All right. So hold person is, for me, the ability that for a long time was one that A, I forgot I even had, because B, I would never use it. Uh, I just didn't find myself using hold person a lot. Once you have the loadout of 2 shadow steps per life, 2 blinks per life, 2 poison weapons per life, infinite assassinates, but that's less important. With your like 2 points of armor, you are you're rolling deep. You've got your throwing weapons, you've got like your main kill ability and your assassinate, you've got all of your insubstantial dodges, and whatnot. You're really doing it by this point. And then you get hold person, which is a spell. It's not extraordinary. It's not ambulent, right? Which means that for this is like the first time, other than the recharge incantation, that you now have to have a free hand and have to keep your feet planted in order to use one of your abilities. And that's like a huge wrench in the whole playstyle of the already like well foundationed assassin, right? So in a lot of cases, you probably are forgetting, at least I did, that you even have this ability, because it's the hardest. It's one of the hardest. Well, it is the hardest to use up to this point. And you're level 4, right? So this is the hardest to use up to this point, and arguably like one of the like weaker abilities that you got at this point, maybe outside of assassinate, which the value of assassinate can be huge or it can be nothing, depending on the game and the classes that you're playing against. And this is also once per life, so there's that. Now, recently, I've come to really see the gold that hold person is, and I'll give you my thought process. So I wasn't using it at all, and because it was never super useful, right? Because like control, it's a verbal, it's subdual, so you're Barbarians are immune to it. Your monks are immune to it. Your paladins and I think anti-paladins are both immune to command as well. They're immune to it. Bards, if they're singing the right song, are immune to it. Your casting classes often have release, so while they're not immune to it, they can end it. Warrior can shake it off, right? So they changed the duration to 10. Um, yeah, so in a lot of cases, your hold person is either going to be immune. I guess I forgot about adapt blessing from Scout, but more often than not, they're going to take pro death because they're afraid of poison weapon. But um, yeah, in a lot of cases, your hold person is not gonna be super useful, right? Like it's not gonna stick for its full duration or perhaps at all. However, that doesn't stop you from chanting it at people. Number one. So I've come to find that say you've got a monk or someone who you know is immune, right? You plant your feet, open your hand, you point, and you holler their name, and you're like, "I command thee to stop! I command thee to stop!" And you say it twice. Maybe at the start of the third sentence, you're like, "I command," and then you don't finish the incantation, okay? Because if you do, then you've just wasted the ability. But often, just starting it is calling out their name. You're required to, uh, but because the spell, uh, that's often enough to catch their attention, right? So that in of itself can be worthwhile if you've got a buddy there, because just like you have to process, well, who's immune to my abilities? A lot of times when you call out someone's name like that authoritatively and you start chanting at them, they've got to do a little bit of brain work as well. Like, am I immune to this? What's going on? Or maybe the brain work that they do is I'm not affected by that. What are you talking about? But you know, you've caused some extra work, extra load on their brain, and sometimes that can be enough to get them got by your buddies, or even by you. Who knows? The other thing is you've got it once per life, and the shake it off is not once per life, right? Let me look this up real quick. Actually, I'm not a fighter, but a warrior. But shake it off is once per refresh, charge times 3. So they can recharge that. But that's a whole lot more valuable than your hold person. So if you hold person the warrior, then now they have to burn a more valuable resource than the one you just burned to shake it off. And if they don't, then heavy armor, 4-point man, 6-point man, woman is stuck. They're stopped for 30 count. You can tag a caster with this, and they have to use their release. And release is also like once per life uh, for a lot of maybe all of the casters. I don't know. A lot of them get release. I think Bards is once per life. Druids is also once per life at second level. Healers get release at first level. They get 2 per life for every time they buy it with a recharge. Yeah, so it's a little bit easier for casters to get out of that situation. Um, However, they have to use the spell in order to do that, and that's something you've got it once per life. So the thought process here is throw that whole person out. If you don't know what to do with it, make it the first thing you do after you apply your poison weapon. Go out there and tag somebody with a whole person. Just do it. Just do it. They're either going to burn a resource or they're going to sit still for 30 feet, for 30 seconds. So better yet, if as an assassin you're often going to be on the sidelines skirmishing, you're not usually going to be on the front lines unless you're just that person, but which is fine. But go to your sidelines and hold person. Now, if you can tag someone with your hold person and stop them somewhat away from the central combat, then here's where the tactics come in, right? Up to now, we're just use the ability, just don't waste it. It's once per life, use it. Now we're talking tactics here. A lot of people, when they cast their hold person, they will sit there and try to use the stopped state on the person they just held and try to fight them. Because admittedly, while the person is stopped, they are a lot easier to kill than if they were not stopped. But I am in the camp of believing that that is the wrong way to go about it, right? So what you should do, in my opinion, is hold person, stop them, and assassin is a numbers game, right? So now they're hanging out. You turn around and go find a buddy who's fighting someone and you tag team somebody, right? Because now what you've done, instead of hold person and now fight this person until you're able to kill them, hopefully, and now you've used a resource and just sat around fighting this person. Now you've held someone, you've gone, you've tag teamed, and you've killed someone else, hopefully. And hopefully it doesn't take very long, right? It's 2v1. So you've just taken someone out. So now you've gotten that same kill, but there's also someone still held, right? And this can be like a snowball effect. This is how the assassin can turn the tide of a battle and really take advantage of this numbers game that we've been trying to generate this whole time, right? So that is the assassin is you shouldn't be worried about trying to get the one kill. The assassin is trying to assassinate the whole team, and you're not always the one that's going to be the one that lands the killing blow, but you can arrange it, right? So that's kind of the way that I would set this up. And you could do that with your blink, right? So though you're communicating with your allies, maybe if there's somebody sticking to you like glue, then communicate with your ally, get someone to break off and come to you. That might distract them long enough for you to come out of insubstantial 2v1 that person and, go, right? Sometimes the assassin's job is to turn the rest of their team into assassins, right? If you can't be behind them, then get your team behind them, that sort of thing. So just keep that in mind. And also, a tactical choice here is once you've stopped one person with your hold person, you might be inclined to try to get behind the enemy team. And I think that is a bad idea because sometimes it works out and it feels really good when you get that drum roll on like 3 or 4 people. That feels great. You feel like a certified, BA. But what you need to be doing is team up with a buddy on the edge and just take that one fight and, turn the tide, snowball that into a team kill. And it's a lot more stable of a strategy because all it takes is you turn around, you're trying to flank the team. The person you just stopped is no doubtedly going to start hollering and screaming for dear life if they're a good teammate for someone to turn around. And now someone has turned around and you're stuck in another 1v1 potentially, right? You don't get to pick who turned around either. So it might be another big warrior man, big warrior lady. You don't know. Someone that you don't really want to fight 1v1. And you're alone, right? You're now on the opposite side of the of the enemy team. And that's just not a great place to be. Not when you can help a buddy win a fight and then cascade that into more wins, and then use that to take out the other team, or whatever this small skirmish is. And 30 count is a fair amount of time, right? So if they've made the choice to not burn a resource to get out of your once per life hold person, then now they're hanging out and their team has just paid the price for it, right? And you can always come back for that person later. But that's hold person, how I believe that the assassin should try to use it, or maybe the most ideal way that I've found to use it to turn the tide of a battle. And worst case scenario, like you just use it every life. Throw it out on somebody. If you can't figure out how to do it comfortably, then just do it. Just because otherwise it's a resource wasted, right? And often you don't want to stick around to continue to fight that person once you've held them. You held them, and then you go and try to win another battle. And that really makes the most out of your ability there. All right. Teleport. Okay, so honestly, I really only have one thing to say about teleport. So the deal with teleport, you get it twice per life, and this is your technically longest range insubstantial ability. So like Blink, you can move while you're teleporting. However, with teleport, you have to go to a preset location. You designate where you're going to teleport when you use the ability, and then you have to go straight there. So you don't have to run, you don't have to crawl, but you can't take detours. You have to take the straightest path, um, excepting for safety, right? So don't walk directly through another person kind of situation, but straightest path there. Teleport, like whole person, is a one of the abilities that is not ambulant, right? So you can't be running while you do the incantation, and it actually has the longest incantation yet. You say I travel through the ether 5 times to initiate your teleport. It is, however, extraordinary, so you don't have to have a free hand, right? You get 2 of these per life. So what I have found the best way to use teleport, because for assassins it's self only. Other classes that get teleport, like wizard, they can actually choose to teleport someone else. But for assassins it's self only. Excuse me. So you don't really want normally to be teleporting yourself alone into like a crowd of angry enemies, right? Because you're an assassin, you get 2 points of armor, and if you're wearing armor at all, and it's a good way to die, right? So, uh, if you've got quick respawn, like 15 count respawn, maybe don't worry about it as much. But if it's a longer respawn, then that can be kind of rough. Excuse me. So, what I found the best way to use your teleport is to designate a location that is basically the other side of the field, the far side, and start making your way over there. You're insubstantial. And ideally, you also want to be doing this when there's a lot of action already going on. I would not open up a game with this because that you're going to get tracked out. If there's nothing else going on, you're going to get tracked out. You're going to get banished. Something like that's going to happen. It might happen anyway. But yeah, so you start your teleport. And honestly, I just want to say also that if you get tracked out or banished out of a teleport, that's not always the worst thing, as long as you're not already surrounded by people, right? That sucks. But teleport is your hardest ability to use. And, it's not going to be one that you're able to get off in time in order to like dodge a spell ball or something with the insubstantial state. So to get banished from a teleport is not that bad, right? It's kind of ideal, right? You go back to your base, and it sucks that that happened, but they just used the resource that they could have used to end one of your more influential states to end a teleport, and that's not that bad. But the cool thing is that while you're in the teleport insubstantial state, moving toward the designated location, you can end that whenever you want with the I return to the physical world, I return to the physical world. The normal end insubstantial incantation. You could do that while moving also. So in a lot of cases, when I've seen this used, particularly well, you're using teleport. People have seen you use teleport. You maybe are even chanting teleport, I'm teleporting, right? Insubstantial teleporting. And people are going to see that, register, oh, that person's going somewhere. And they're either going to take huge offense that you're teleporting and they're going to like run you down or be screaming at the top of their lungs. They want somebody to get you out of that insubstantial state because they see you as a threat, or they're just going to completely write you off. They're like, well, that person is going away. And then you end the state. which ends your requirement to move toward the designated location, and then you just go hog wild, right? You get behind people that way. So just be ready when you end your teleport to use another one of your insubstantial abilities to get out of heat, because um, this is the easiest one for people to kind of get you. Excuse me. It's the easiest one for people to get you because you have to end the insubstantial state immediately once you get to the location that was pre-designated. So you almost always want to try to end it early. And ideally, you're getting behind people who have kind of checked you off in their brain, or there will be someone who is like following you to the location, and then you end it early and you jump them, right? While they're not expecting it. And that's probably the best ways that I've seen for the assassin to use the teleport, because it can only be used on themselves. Other than that, really you're going to be using this to get around troublesome terrain, like on a bridge battle or something. But even that can be questionable, because in a lot of those situations, if your insubstantial gets ended while you're in hazardous terrain, you just kind of die. So there's not a lot of fun with that. But those are the best ways I've found to use the teleport. So once again, with teleport, you don't have to have a free hand. You cannot be moving. It's not ambulant, unfortunately. You say the incantation 5 times. It's really slow to get it off. It's self only for assassin, and you have to pre-designate the location you're going to and move towards it the entire time while you're in substantial. But ideally, you want to end it before you get there, like well before you get there. All right, and the last ability is coup de grace. So coup de grace is another spell. It's once per life. It is the last of the abilities, and it also is not ambulant. And because it is a spell and follows the normal magic rules, you have to have an open hand in order to cast it. So similar to hold person and teleport, it can be kind of clunky compared to the other assassin stuff that way. It is, however, unique in that you are the only melee class, non-casting, melee person that gets a point and click like kill button, right? So coup de grace, just kill somebody, which is awesome. There is the condition that they have to be wounded at the time you start the incantation. They do not have to be wounded by the time you finish. So the dream scenario that everybody loves to think about is you see a wounded person, you start chanting, and then a healer comes up and they heal them, but haha, now I've just ended it, and even though you're healed, you're dead now. Um, that hasn't really happened a lot. I haven't seen that happen a lot. In fact, I feel like coup de grace ends up for me having the kind of problem where if it's the person you're fighting and you've successfully wounded them, then you may have had poison weapon up and they're just dead already, or B, you might be like, maybe you have like a big advantage against this person for whatever reason, and you just wounded them. You might be winning that fight already. So it could take longer and be harder to stop the combat, to back up, get into safe casting range, and then try to cast at them. You could just hit them again, and in the fight that way. So it is kind of a little awkward, I've found. However, it has uses, right? So, and it's probably the case that I've found most of the time is that you are going to use this on fights that were being done by other people, basically. So, or you pair it with like a throwing weapon or something of the like. But usually somebody gets legged, and you coup de grace them while they're legged, and that takes them off the board. This is really good for anti polearm or anti shieldman, shield woman strategies, because shield users end up getting harder to kill, actually, especially if they have like armor on their chest and arms and such. Once they've been legged, because they turtle up, right? So you can just coup de grace those people. And polearm users still have quite a bit of range. So once they have been legged, hopefully by like a throwy, if you're using that throwy tactic, we talked about before, you got underneath the pole and you bounced it, and you've got their leg. Then now you coup de grace them from a safe distance without having to interact with their huge amount of defense or the huge range advantage. So that's kind of nice. But it really doesn't come up that often, I've found. So if anybody else has any tips for that one, then I'd love to hear it. Other than that, you can team up with your wizard. If they take wounding, right? They can strike off someone's arm. That's a quick, easy way to get a wound, and then you follow that up with your coup de grace. No reason to not do it. And then you need to quickly follow that up with assassinate, because you can use assassinate even on your coup de grace. It's any kill within 20 feet, and coup de grace has a range of 20 feet. So if you're coup de grace someone, you can assassinate them. And yeah, don't forget your assassinate. That applies to like all of your kills within 20 feet, especially your coup de grace. So, definitely remember to do that. And then take advantage of the number differential. You need to team up, go get somebody else. And that's pretty much it. That's the assassin class tactics. That's from Gonti's playbook for the assassin. And I'd love to see some comments down below if maybe you disagree with how I use certain abilities, or maybe you've got cool ideas as well that I didn't cover. So I'd love to hear that. And until then, take care.